I've talked a lot of crap about bad leaders on this podcast because I've dealt with a bunch of them. And so have all of you, which is why you're here. But there are good leaders. There are great leaders who can have ridiculous asks. But usually you're not frustrated with them because you have all this goodwill, because you know that you can ask a clarifying question. You can say something like, why are you asking about that? And your good leader will say, because they save us $1,000 a week. And it's like, all right, I can see if that's true. I'll go check with the team and see if we can get that. Like, that's the conversation with a good leader. We tend to talk about crappy leaders and how they come through and they're like, I don't understand why you can't get this done. This is going to be so easy. And that's when you need these tools.
Welcome to the Project Management Happy Hour. Our aim is to share frank and honest discussion about real-world issues in project management, but do it in a way that's not too dry, though it might get a bit salty sometimes. Top Shelf Replay, say no by saying yes.
If you've ever had a moment on a project where somebody asks you to do something and you just want to say no, this one's for you. Welcome to Top Shelf Replay. It's time for us to revisit an episode, and this is technically an appetizer. She's a little itty bitty, but an episode or a snippet that was so good, it deserves to be talked about twice.
We've been doing this podcast for 8 years now, and we reference our earlier episodes all the time. We originally aired Say No by Saying Yes on October 10th, 2017.
A different time we were in then. And it was in a format that we were trying out called Appetizers. So there's a couple of them from the very beginning that are just short little ditties where we were just trying out what it's like. And I'm not even in the original one. So deal with only Kim for the next couple of minutes. And so since I'm not in it, we're going to play this episode for you as it originally aired. And at the end of the original episode, we'll come back with how we've changed since then, including how to take this phrase to become a strategic, trusted partner.
So today I want to focus on a technique that came up in our first 5 podcasts, the first 5 questions you should ask when starting any project. And that technique is this: say no by saying yes. Now, being able to say no is something that every project manager needs to be able to do, and you need to be comfortable with it. But it's not always easy, right? When a sponsor who might be in a very high position in your company, like the CEO, or a very important customer of your company asks, or maybe even tells you straight up to go and do something, it can be really awkward to turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do that. And sometimes a simple response like that really isn't the most productive way to respond. While there are some of us who have no problem saying no to anybody, and maybe some people get a sick pleasure from saying it, there are a lot of us out there, myself included, who are maybe not as naturally assertive, and you have to develop that. Or we're in situations where we are not as sure of ourselves, and this technique can help us through that and say no when it needs to be said. So before we get further on this, let's clarify what kind of questions I'm talking about. Now, you can use this technique for really pretty much anything, but I'm specifically talking here in a project context. For example, when a sponsor says, hey, I need you to go and get this done in half the time that you already committed to getting it done. Or a team lead says, hey, I need to take this resource off your project. That's not a problem, is it? I've got another priority. Or, hey, can we release a Spanish language version of the software at the same time as we release the English one? Now, there's a lot of ways that we can handle this kind of thing, but this technique is one that I learned from a very wise old project leader many, many years ago when I was just getting into the profession. And where he got it from, honestly, I don't know. Or maybe he made it up. Who knows? If you know where this came from, please ping us at our Facebook page at PM Happy Hour or email me at podcast@PM Happy Hour, and I would love to give proper attribution to whoever came up with this idea. But this technique is really just as simple as it sounds. Say no by saying yes, or yes, but. Let me give you a couple examples to illustrate. So when our sponsor said, I need you to get this project done in half the time, you might respond with, yes, we may be able to do that, but we would need 3 times the resources for about 3 times the cost. Is that really what you want to do? Or our team lead example, when he says, hey, can I take this resource off your project? I have another priority. You can respond by saying, yes, we could let him off the project. But you will need to help me get buy-in from our project sponsor whose deliverables would be delayed by so many months if you do that. Or can we release a Spanish language version of the software at the same time as our English? You might respond, yes, we can do that. But that would mean that we either need to delay the release of our English language edition until the Spanish is ready, or we can double our investment in the Spanish language resources to try and get it done in time. So the idea is to think in terms of options instead of absolutes yes or no, which is more really the reality that we all live in. It's also a really good mindset to have as a project manager. It's very easy for us to get locked into this control mindset when anything that might affect our triple constraints, the holy trinity of scope, schedule, and cost is at threat. We want to fend that off and say, no, don't touch this. Now, does that mean that the answer will never simply be no? Well, of course not. If somebody says, hey, I know your project team works 16 hours per day all week, and we'd really like them to work all-nighters all weekend, you can come back and say, well, no, it's probably not going to happen. Or, hey, can we pay off the warehouse clerk with a bottle of whiskey so he'll release our shipment? Well, clearly no. There's a lot of times when simply no is really the right answer.
I love this technique, and I still talk about it all the time. I was just talking to my wife about it. She had a problem at work, and I brought this up to her. So I think it's relevant and timely for everybody all the time.
Yeah, people hate hearing no. Look, one of the things I think is so interesting is I always thought that no created clarity and that we shouldn't be afraid to say no to things. But one of the things I have learned in my decades-long career at this point is how much people hate hearing no. And it feels like the only thing to do about it is to say yes instead. And so I guess how I feel is I'm like, man, I do think this is a great technique for the situations that we're talking about. But what is on my mind lately is how much leaders just need to hear yes in order to move forward. Like, leaders are not great at hearing no anymore. So then instead you have to say yes, even if it's a yes, but, or a yes, and, or a yes, something else. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't, there were some options that you gave, in what you said, which was like, oh, like, can we bribe the man to get the shipment in? And it's like, no, we can't do that. But people are like, just do it anyways. You know what I mean? And so what I think is really interesting is how yes essentially meets a social, like, brain psychology thing, but then we still have to say no anyways. That has been very much on my mind lately.
Yeah, people just don't understand. Suddenly, you're being difficult instead of you're bringing reality.
Yeah.
But what strikes me though, something we've talked a lot about this and developed this, and you put a lot of thought into this kind of thing around our recent talk at PMI Global Summit for Stupid Executive Asks.
Yeah. I feel like we have to do a whole episode dedicated to it at this point, because I'm like, affirm, caution, query, like that's, and I couldn't believe it listening to this. I was like, oh my gosh, Kim is doing affirm, caution, query, because I took notes. You said, yes, we may be able to do that, but we will need 3 times the resources for 3 times the cost. Is that really what you want to do? Which was literally, yes, we may be able to do that, affirm, but we will need 3 times the resources for 3 times the cost, caution. And then, is that really what you want to do? Query. I'm like, that's the formula. That's what we've been talking about since one of the earliest episodes we recorded is affirm, caution, query.
Although I said, when we first started here, that this is something is still applicable and something we use. I'm learning more about it actually based on some of the things that you said in your research. And it might have even been in some of the QA from PMI Global Summit. And it was this concept where, and I don't remember how you said it, or even if you just said it outright, but when you get an ask like that, the executive or the person asking has a problem and they're trying to make it your problem. I need this done. I need it done in half the time that we committed and agreed to it being done, because for whatever reason, and they are making that your problem. When really, as the sponsor, as the stakeholder, whatever it is, it's really their problem to sort out. And they have to make the hard business decision. And so this is a great technique for us to obviously boomerang it back, but really they give you a problem and say, look, you want it done half the time. I can do that, but it's going to cost you 3 times. So now you have to make the hard decision. So it's actually your problem. This is how you solve it.
And that touches on another thing that you said that I really liked, which was checking my notes. You said, we get into a control mindset when anything that could touch our triple constraint is a threat. We just want to fend that off and say, no, don't touch this. And I think to your point with this boomerang thing, it's like, well, the original triple constraint did not include getting it done in half the time. And so it's one of those things where I recently saw a TikTok with a song from a contractor, and the contractor, like a general contractor for construction, where he was like, I saw that job and I didn't want to do it. So I quoted high, but I didn't want to insult them. And then the customer said, great, I'll see you on Monday. And now I have to do the crappy job that I didn't want to do, that I didn't bid high enough. Which is probably a lot of money for this person, but now they have to do the crappy job, right? But it's like, that contractor, poor contractor on the internet now has said, I will fix your crappy problem for this amount of money, and maybe said I could get it done in, we'll say a month. Like, I have no idea. It was a water-based problem, so who's to say? But right, so now they've said, okay, here's this high budget value. We'll say it's $100,000, right? Like for $100K, I'll fix your crappy water basement problem. And you're like, yeah, and you're like, dang it. But then if that person comes back and says, I can't have this done in a month, I need it done in 2 weeks, that is that sponsor's problem. So whether that's happening and you're a general contractor, or you're working on a software team and they say the release date has to be moved up, that has to be a conversation that you have. And I do think it is so easy to get stuck in like but we did our thing already and you can't have this stuff. And so I just really like what you said about that. And even making it back to their problem, I think separating who owns what is a really important part of project management that, like, it's not easy to do. You have to really you almost have to step outside of the project in order to be able to talk about it like that.
Back to your contractor TikTok, I've done that.
Bid high and then not wanted to do it?
Yeah, I've had a customer that are kind of difficult. I'm like, gosh, I don't really want to do this. So I quote double the rate. This is fine. I'd be happy to help you. This is my rate though. So I understand. And they say, yeah, okay. I'm like, God dang it. Okay, fine.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I think is interesting is, the longer you go on in your career, the better you get at recognizing the terrible, like, contractors and customers. There's someone I'm coaching. Oh, this poor person, they have an absolutely miserable client. This client is somebody who, whenever this PM sends them, the next steps on the project, this customer comes back and is like, yeah, well, it's like not that hard to do that. You could do that in like a day. And also, I don't know why I have to do this. You should do it. And the thing that I think is interesting is that their company has decided that they do want that this customer is an important customer, and sales or someone identified during the pitch process that this customer was going to be this type of bad customer. But they have also decided that this customer is strategic enough, like has enough future potential project value out of either recommendations or other, like whatever their industry lay of the land is telling them, this customer's worth the investment. And so they have decided to say yes to this client's ridiculous asks, absolutely ridiculous. Like, oh, you have a standard flow. I would like, steps 4 and 5 switched. I want it to go 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 6, 7, 8. And they're saying yes, even though they sell that flow to dozens of other customers. And so one of the things that I have coached this person on is like, that's not just your problem. That is the problem of everyone who said yes to this customer. And so when this customer says, I would like this thing, you can say, that's a pain. You could say, yeah, that's something we can look into, and loop in the people who have also agreed to deal with this absolutely monster, awful customer. Because you're not the project manager who decided to take that on from like the internal PM perspective. Your dumb bosses or salespeople or executives decided to work with this awful customer. And here's the thing, they are not going to work with that customer every single day. They're going to work with that customer only whenever you bring that customer up, which is why I think you should bring up that customer kind of all the time. time because nobody wants to work with that person. So sorry, you talked about like bidding the thing and getting the crappy customer. And I'm like, and then there's times whenever you didn't even bid and you're stuck with the crappy customer where you need to do, say yes by saying no to everything that they say, which is exhausting.
Yeah, and I think some of this goes back to a recent burnout discussion as well, which is really, which I had never considered that as part of this, but it really is because as we talked about in that episode, it's about how did we say it? Not owning other people's problems. I think our guest, and you said that much better than I'm trying to say it, but if somebody's got a problem that they've gotten themselves into and they're trying to make it your problem, you need to let it be their problem. No, I'm sorry. You've got to make a hard decision here. Are you going to go get more money for this? Or are you going to have to go say, I'm sorry, it's actually not going to be done faster?
Yeah. I really need to do the gentle parenting webinar because
Yes.
I really feel like the gentle parenting is the way to go. I use this technique all the time with very emotional stakeholders. And so I will first tell you of the 5-year-old who inspired me. I was once very mean to a 5-year-old because I don't have kids and didn't know how to be good to children. And so a 5-year-old who was very important to me in my life, she was jumping on the couch and she wouldn't stop. And I said, if you don't stop jumping on the couch, you won't be allowed to come back here. Because that's how my parents talked to me whenever I was a kid. And I watched that child melt into a puddle of sadness, just like completely shut down. And I was like, oh no, I have broken the baby. Okay, well, if that's not how you're supposed to talk to children, what do you do about a bossy 5-year-old who's got opinions and you can't get them to stop what they're doing and you don't talk to them like a monster? And the internet was like, have you heard of gentle parenting? And I learned that in gentle parenting, it's very similar to a firm caution query. Somebody came up to me after the talk at PMI Global, and he was like, you could do this with kids. This is like with kids. I was like, yeah, it is. It's exactly like what it is with kids. And so, when you have a 5-year-old who's like, I want to do X, Y, or Z, right? And for this will be like, I don't want to stop jumping on the couch. It's so fun. I love this couch. I can't stop jumping on it. I want this project done in 2 weeks, right? You say, hey, I can see you're having a lot of fun, but it's time to get off the couch. Do you want to get off the couch by yourself or do you want me to help you get off the couch? Like, you don't give them an option to not be on the couch. You give them 2 options, something we've talked about frequently on this podcast. Anytime you're going to leadership, give them options. Come in with a recommendation. You could say something like, if I help you get off the couch, it's going to happen, like, you're not going to like it, right? For whatever reason, right? Like I'm not, I'm going to have to pick you up. And, if the 5-year-old doesn't want to be picked up, then that's a thing that the 5-year-old doesn't want to have happen. So it's like, and if I help you, I'm going to have to pick you up. So do you want to get off on your own? Show me how good you can do that. And then, 5-year-old gets off couch, which is that specific example I've never gotten to see again. But with that particular child, there are many different moments where I've implemented essentially gentle parenting, which is like affirm child's emotions and then offer an option and let the child choose. And that's the same thing as what we're talking about with these moments whenever your sponsors come back with, I want something. And sometimes it's reasonable. I had a client I worked with last year, and there was a flow that we were making. And in the flow, we were limited by the license that this client had for how many pages could be in it. And I knew my client was going to want 1 question per page, but based off the license we had, I was like, we can't do that. And so whenever I showed this to my client for review, because I was managing the vendor, the first thing my client said was, can this be on different pages? Like, I want 1 question on each page. And I was like, no. It's the first thing that I said, because I knew that would, for that particular client, I knew that I needed to be clear and that saying yes could actually be more challenging. And so I said, no. And I said, here's the thing. It is possible to do this on more than 1 page. Of course it is. You can do anything with technology. However, your license and the level that we're paying for this, and I don't think we should pay more, like, we're limited to like X number of pages. So, and what you would need is, X plus 5 number of pages to make this exactly how you'd like it to be. So we had to make a compromise, and this was the best option that we could do with that compromise. So I was like, if you want to pay more, I will go back and ask them to redo it. We have already invested, X amount of hours on the contract. You're already at this level of monthly OpEx to pay for this particular, tool that you're using. So I would not recommend that we go back and do this. I think that this is good enough for what our goals are, what our anticipated ROI is with this particular tool. And that conversation did go well. My client was still not thrilled, but I was like, no. And here's how we would get to yes. So I do think there is even nuance in how you do these things. But sorry, just thinking through some examples in my past year, that was how I've handled some of those.
I just have a mental image of a CEO in the suit and tie jumping up and down on a couch. So
Well, it's not usually the CEO that's behaving that way, but like
yeah, I get it.
there are certainly leaders that behave that way for sure.
And this isn't just for projects. It's really for any time you're working with people. So I mentioned, I was just talking with my wife about it, and she's in a situation where she's got a manager and they're asking for a certain number of things to be done, claims filed or whatever the widgets are that they do in their world.
Yeah.
And normally in their organization, they do, I'm going to pick random numbers here, but let's say they normally go through 15 of these claims or these things they do per month. And the manager comes and says, all right, well, we got to hurry up and get this stuff done. So we need to do 20 per week. I need you guys to get 20 done per week. And that's it. Walked off.
And they normally do 15 per month?
Maybe 15 per month.
Okay.
So like, oh, we need 20 per. I'm like, whoa. And so they're like, I don't know what to do. What are we going to do? Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I said, well, maybe you say no by saying yes and say, well, with the team that we have, the most that we can possibly do is this many. If you want to get that many done per week, and I said you should probably do the math and say how many hours per person does it take to do one of these things, and say, all right, for us to get that number out per week, we need this many more headcount to do it. So do you want to deal with the number that we already do? Or do you want to give us more headcount? And so again, it's taking that problem and putting it back. And it was funny. It was just happened this past week. I was talking to my wife about this exact same thing.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm really noticing too with senior leaders, I talked about this recently on a members only happy hour, where I think that the reason why leadership comes in with ridiculous asks is because they are super busy and often don't have all the context on what's going on. And so, with your wife's example, right? They do 15 widget things a month. And maybe those 15 widget things, this executive is like, oh my God, we make 15 widgets and, they save us, $1,000 every time we do a widget. We should be doing $20,000 worth of widget savings per week, right? But has absolutely no context that, making one widget is about 20 hours of work and that person's work costs about, I don't know, $750. And so now it's like, okay, so now we're going to make $250 in savings, right? Like really truly net savings. And so when it comes to, should we, double or triple the amount of headcount, and also there's the question of, sometimes, right? There's that, old PM joke about like, you can't make a baby in 3 months by having 3 women be pregnant at the same time. Like some babies, actually, truly, most babies take a full 9 months to make without assistance. There's not really a way to speed that up. So sometimes there are processes where, it's like if you want 4 times the output, you hire 4 times the people. There's no process improvements when we're doing more. And sometimes there is, but sometimes there isn't. It just depends on if you're quite literally, growing a baby, or if you're doing something where if you bought a tool, could this process be automated? And those are all trade-offs. And those executives don't know those things. So the reason why they're coming in with such ridiculous, asks all the time is sometimes if they are good leadership, right? Because I've talked a lot of crap about bad leaders on this podcast because I've dealt with a bunch of them. And so have all of you, which is why you're here. But there are good leaders. There are great leaders who can have ridiculous asks. But usually you're not frustrated with them because you have all this goodwill, because you know that you can ask a clarifying question. You can say something like, why are you asking about that? And your good leader will say, because they save us $1,000 a week. And it's like, all right, I can see if that's true. I'll go check with the team and see if we can get that. Like, that's the conversation with a good leader. We tend to talk about crappy leaders and how they come through and they're like, I don't understand why you can't get this done. This is going to be so easy. And that's when you need these tools.
You bring up a really good point. These asks are not necessarily from a position of being a jerk or something like that. And our reaction oftentimes is, you're a freaking idiot, you're stupid, and you're mean and whatever. Mm-hmm. But my discussion with my wife was, well, is it possible he just does not understand what it takes to do one of these widgets? And she's like, I don't think he has any idea. I'm like, well, maybe this is an opportunity to help him understand. Like, I know you're wanting us to get all these things done in this amount of time, but a little bit of education can make him a little bit more informed on why. And so that helps him make a more informed business decision. Maybe it makes sense for him to go ahead and invest in a bunch of people because he's got
Totally.
bigger business things forcing widgets. But, a lot of times, as I said, these asks can come from a position of just lack of knowledge, and we're in a good position to maybe educate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whenever those things come up, it's really important to be able to step outside of the project and act
Yeah.
like take off your project manager hat and put on your executive sponsor hat, right? Like if you were to step outside your project and you're not tied to the solution that you're delivering, you're not tied to the team that's doing it, you're not tied to any of it, right? All you're focused on is the success criteria and like the reason for change and the outcome that you want at the end of the project, then it can be easier, a lot easier to have these conversations. Because what you're saying is like, you could take a step outside and you can say, okay, like I think we could make, an extra bajillion widgets per week, whatever the ask is, right? 1 bajillion widgets coming right up. But if you're able to put that hat on, then you can say strategically, right? Okay, we can make 1 bajillion widgets. Is the goal, more money, like more revenue, more income, or is the goal cost savings? Like if you put on your strategic hat, your executive sponsor hat, and you ask a question back to them, then you can understand where the request could be coming from and sort of focus the way that you respond. I was talking to another person that I coach about how like everybody has to grow their executive presence skills, but a lot of people think of executive presence as and like I have too, as, ending on a down and pausing when you talk, seeming like you take up a lot of space. But for me, the big difference with executive presence was actually being able to turn on that strategic mindset and to take off my project manager hat and put on my project sponsor hat and be able to respond to what's happening from a place of outcomes and being focused on delivering to why the project needed to happen. And if you're able to talk like that, then you'll take the, attacks against the threat of your triple constraint much easier. Like you just won't feel that you won't feel that stress nearly as much because you're not married to your triple constraint. You're married to the true outcomes and success of the project. And leaders, I think, look for people that want to partner like that. Good leaders do. Bad leaders are terrified of you, but good leaders look for people who want to partner like that.
For me, it changes the way I think. It makes me stay open to the idea instead of having this gut reaction of, no, it doesn't. I don't want to change my constraints. We said we're going to do this. We're going to do it, whether or not it makes sense anymore. And so it helps, for me personally, it helps me relax and chill a little bit and say, yeah, there could be other ways to do this. And maybe, this constraint is not the most important thing on this project, and just helps me keep my mind open and keeps me flexible.
Do you remember like a moment when that shifted for you? Because hearing you say that, I go, oh yeah, I agree. But I know especially in the beginning of my career, I was like, if I don't deliver this exactly what they said, I got to get it all done. And I got just a little stress ball around those constraints. And then now I'm like, oh yeah, it's way better. Sometimes I still get caught up in it. I like to see things get done. It's frustrating if nothing ever gets done. We're doers at heart, all of us. But do you remember when that shifted for you?
As I shared in the original episode, I learned this from a manager I used to have years and years ago. And it was really early in my project management career. And he beat that into us all. I think every meeting we had, he would say something about saying no by saying yes. But I know before then, anytime somebody would start to get close to that line, right, the border, like, oh, you're getting close to out of scope, and my gut tightens. I'm like, oh, no, don't go closer. Back off. No, inch closer. And I start getting more and more aggressive about get back in the line. You're coming too close to the border. And, I think to the wise nature of this boss I had, he saw that, probably not just me, but amongst my other project manager colleagues who were also probably about my same level of maturity at the time.
Of course.
And it was through that process. And I was there for a couple of years. So it took a while for me to learn it and really exercise it. But when I come out of working with that team and underneath that manager, I was in a much better place when it came to not just managing scope in a positive way, but also dealing with the agile nature of projects. Projects change and people need different things. And it wasn't blasphemy to talk about, should we change the scope on this or change this project a little bit?
Yeah, that's amazing. I just want to do a quick PM Happy Hour membership update. I just want to tell the world of listeners that we're undergoing a tech stack refresh.
Yeah.
And I love it and I hate it. I feel like I'm talking to people who understand oh yeah, here's my product I'm marketing. But also, guys, do you know what it's like to do a tech stack refresh? It's such a pain and it's really hard to capture all the requirements and to make sure that you're doing a good job and to really think through everything. And I'm the sponsor who said, guys, let's do a tech stack refresh. I'm the worst. Fire me. I hate myself. This is dumb. So marketing. But I totally acknowledge there are some things that are not perfect about our existing tech stack. And I am very excited that I have found a solution to my problems. The solution to my problems is a new tech stack. So I'm in the process of getting our membership migrated to a new location. If you tried us out before and weren't like super pumped or it's been years, now might be the time to re-engage with us. If you want to be notified of the new launch of our refreshed, exciting website tech stack for where you get your PDUs, where you can be part of the community, go to pmhappyhour.com/tech refresh to be put on a list to be notified whenever this goes live. I am sort of doing my best to document also how this is going. And if you'd like to follow along, go to pmhappyhour.com/tech refresh to do that. I will probably send out, I'm also sitting here, I'm like, I should tell our members what this is like, or at least the people on the list. I should tell the people on the list what this is like because, hey, you guys are all project managers, who've done this stuff before. Nothing like hey guys, ready? Are you ready for this? Do I have a charter? Nay, it's in my brain. Do I have a fully fleshed out requirements traceability matrix? Nay. Do I have clear scope in my head? Yes. Have I done a business case for this? Yes, I have.
Yes, you did.
I have done a business case.
It was good.
I did a business case where I evaluated tools, options, what we were paying, what functionality we needed, and the problems for both ourselves and our members across both platforms. And I have come to the conclusion that I have the solve. And then from that, I have been furiously doing a lot of the work myself, which is part of the reason why there's not a great plan. And then also, I have been working with a team and delegating parts of that work. So if you want to see more, if you want to be part of this, I know I'm really selling it hard right now, but I also feel like I'm talking to people who know what I am going through. Go to pmhappyhour.com/tech refresh and you can sign up to get notified for whatever the new membership platform experience launches. It's going to be all the same great things that we have offered before, but in a far easier to find places. And we will have one unified place to get both your PDU quizzes and all of the members only happy hour content, including our twice a month webinars that we do. Plus, we've just added twice a month on the other weeks that we're not doing those things, office hours where you can bring your questions to Kim and I, and all the resources you need and replays of old previously happened webinars that we've done. So just a lot of things going on over here. So just gonna say it one more time, pmhappyhour.com/tech refresh, shameless plug because I'm working really hard and I want people to come see it. So come see the new cool stuff I'm working on and ask me questions. And I can tell you that you're not a bad project manager if not everything is fully fleshly all the way done out. Some of those things are in progress, but would love to have you there. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but one of my first project management, one of my first, he wasn't my first project management bosses. He was like, the direction I got was, you got to be nicer. So I think this is gendered. But I do think he was coming from a place of wanting to see me be successful because this person still wants to see me successful. And still is cheering me on. But he was like, you can't be he didn't say this exactly, but he almost did. He was like, you can't be a nightmare when people tell you that about things. You got to be nice. I will never forget him saying a smiley face in an email can go a long way. But I do think, and the feedback over the course of my career has been that that I've got some jagged edges, and it's true, right? The example I gave today on this podcast was my sponsor being like, "Can we make this multiple pages?" And I was like, "No." No. That's what came out of my mouth. But I did that with nearly now 20 years of experience on knowing this customer, knowing that no would not be the end of the conversation, still giving my customer options to work through the like the outcome. But for that particular moment, I chose to start with no because I wanted to keep the meeting on track. I wanted to get this particular work done. This was not the most important thing we were doing. And we were on a limited time frame to get feedback back to the customer. And also I knew enough about the rest of the business to know, to like be able to confidently say that and act more as a strategic partner and less as a project manager in terms of getting that done. But like, I don't know if there are many rooms where I would say that. And if I wasn't a boss and in charge in general, now I focus on that. How do I come across in a way that sounds like a partner, in a way that sounds like I'm not taking this personally? Because I can get really personal over like, I'm sorry, you think my plan is bad? I'm sorry, did you think I didn't incorporate that? Like those are me under stress. Style under stress, screw you, I know what I'm doing. It's my style under stress. So like that's definitely a thing I could work through. So I guess it's so funny to be like, I know how to do this. Do I do this 100% of the time? I try. And I can in really high stress situations when I'm like monitoring absolutely everything that's happening because I'm like, we're playing a dance in there. But, there are definitely times when I'm like, crap, I didn't come back to that well. So I think I have to have my thing turned on.
You said an interesting word. You said partner.
Mm.
Do you think that asking this question helps change the dynamic and positions you more as a partner with somebody when you take this approach?
Absolutely. Because I think what you can demonstrate through saying no by saying yes or a firm caution query is you can demonstrate that you believe you are sharing their goal. Like, not that you're sharing the vision of 1 billion widgets a week or whatever, that you're sharing the vision of what they're after. And I do think, one of the things I have struggled with over the past couple of years is like, I've asked a lot of people this question. I've asked, do you feel understood by other people in your life?
Huh. No.
And like that's shocking to me because I'm like, well, I expect to be understood.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people I've talked to and they're like, I don't expect to be understood, but I don't think people understand me.
Huh.
And I think that whenever you affirm and caution and you are asking your question or saying no by saying yes and saying, if we do blah, 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 is that really what you want to do? Is we are saying, I either understand you or am trying to understand you. Can you help me? Like, I think the subtext is I'm trying to understand you. And I'm also trying to deliver this mutual goal that I believe we share. So if that is the mutual goal, can you help me understand what I'm missing to get to that goal? And then I think that absolutely shifts you from, executor to strategic partner. But becoming that person requires expanding how you look at things. We've talked about like stepping back, not taking it personally, things like that, so that they feel like you are somebody they can work with. Because another piece of advice that I got somewhere was like, the less personal you take things and the more detached you are from your job, the more strategic people see you and the more they want to work with you, which is also crazy to me. And so, but I think between those, it's like some in the marble jar that makes up like things that a good strategic partner is, like those are definitely marbles that, and like other stuff inside that jar.
Yeah, there was a negotiation book I read sometime, and it was written by some famous negotiator who works on the intergovernment type level, national agreements and that kind of thing. And his main piece of advice in this whole business book, and that's the way a lot of business books go, right? You got this big old book and there's actually one nugget in there that they write a book around.
Just keep repeating that one nugget over and over again. Say it 18 different ways to make you understand the nugget. To be fair, that's how, right? It took you years to have that, to say no by saying yes, like work into your mind. It took me years to like really understand the shift. Like, so one book on one thing makes sense to me.
It does. And this guy's nugget was you need to care, but not too much.
Yeah.
If you care too much, you can't properly negotiate because you've got too many stakes and you're going to take it too personally. But you got to care about the outcome, but you have to have that level of detachment like you were just mentioning.
Yeah. I am currently reading a negotiation book that my favorite thing that this hostage negotiator has talked about. He talks about how it's funny. He criticizes getting to yes. He's like, one of the things about getting to yes is that it seeks a yes, and people say these like counterfeit yeses where they don't mean it. Like, and we're even talking about that right now, right? Where we're saying, hey, you're trying to say no, so just say yes. because that's what people want to hear. So it's very appeasing. Like yes is a very appeasing word. And also, just as a tiny side note, sorry, we're getting ADHD Kate today. I saw a different TikTok about someone talking about, and like, I'm not saying this person is an expert on the Chinese language, but he talked about, I think this is in Mandarin, that there is no word for yes. There's words for like sure, and there's words for like I agree, or like it is what it is, or things like that. But there's no like one singular translated word that simply means yes. Like, do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do that? Yes. Are you cold? Yes. Are you hot? Yes, right? Like that you could just answer it in the same situation. Do you make $10,000 a week? Yes, like whatever it is. Like there's no one word you could use over and over again in all of those situations because the affirmative words that he was talking about were different depending on the situation and who's asking. And there is a word that you can use, but that you wouldn't use in both a formal situation and an informal situation. Like you can use yes in a meeting with the president of your company. And you can also say yes with your best friend's drunk at happy hour. Like you can use yes in the same context in both of those situations. And he was saying there wasn't a word for that. So I thought that was fascinating because what this man in this book is talking about for negotiation is he's like, if you try to get people to yes, you're going to get a counterfeit yes, which is like, yeah, I can like what, like just stop talking to me. I'm just going to say yes. The same way that like telemarketers can call and be like, hey, do you need to breathe air to live? And do you like helping children not die? And you're like, how dare you ask me these questions where I'm forced into saying yes? I don't want to have like, that makes me feel like I'm held hostage in these conversations. And what he talked about was, if you let someone say no, that person will feel a sense of control and autonomy. And from feeling control and autonomy, develop rapport that you can have a honest negotiation with. And so he recommends that his telemarketers start with, is this a bad time? And then you can say, no, right? Like, oh, hey, so glad I caught you on the phone. Is this a bad time? And you go, no, I can talk. And like, you kind of also have to think about saying no in a way that we kind of don't think about saying yes. And also that, people call me and be like, is this a bad time? And I'm like, yeah, like I cannot talk right now. I thought that you were, a new job offer or, something important. I'm in a meeting. I have to go. And, you can call me at, 3 p.m. this afternoon. And I can pick up the phone then. And that also, like, I have also said no by saying yes in that way. I'm like, I can't talk now, I can talk later. And sometimes they negotiate that out of me. But then I'm in control of when the phone call happens. And when people feel in control, they negotiate more honestly and you can get to better outcomes. And I'm really, really thinking about that a lot lately because I'm so curious about how to incorporate more of that into like letting folks feel more autonomy. And so I think that what we're talking about with saying no by saying yes is not necessarily that. Like, it's not totally counterfeit. We're saying we can do whatever you want. You're just going to have to make some choices. And if you say, do you want to do this? And they say no, that can also contribute to like, you respect that. They get to decide. They're autonomous. They're agency confirmed. So then they are feeling like a partner in charge. So I think there's a lot of psychology, I think, that goes into these asks. And neither you or I are even an expert. It's just like the decades of lived experience between us. Like we've seen all these things in action.
I'd like to toast to whoever it was that came up with this idea, whether it was that boss I used to have or someone he learned from. I'd like to toast whoever invented say no by saying yes. Cheers.
I toast to that. Cheers, Kim.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. If you liked our show, please leave a review and a comment on iTunes or wherever you get our podcast. Your review really does mean a lot. And if you want to check out our membership site and all of our cool content there, you can check that out at pmhappyhour.com/membership. If you want to talk to us directly about project management, PM consulting, training, or whatever, our contact info is on our website under About Your Hosts, or you can just hit us up on our Facebook site at PM Happy Hour. You'll find we're really pretty easy to get a hold of there. And that's it for today. Good luck with your projects, and we hope to catch you again at the next PM Happy Hour. Cheers.